Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me today I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone listening in. We have been away since we had our 100th episode, which was a bit of a celebration of the podcast. We have been away since then because it's been the festive period and it always gets a bit tricky to record an episode. So we're back, ringing in the new year with an episode of The Tigers Down Under. We're going to recap the games that we've had over the festive period and then look ahead to two pretty big games coming up tomorrow morning and also this weekend. So I guess the first of the five, we had the disappointing defeat to Leeds where, we looked promising at different points in the game, but then unfortunately I think it was a Device own goal that put us behind, and then after an Eves goal was cleared off the line, or a chance was cleared off the line, they went up down the other end and, arguably shouldn't have scored a second goal, Bamford taking out Long in the process. But, promising signs in that game. I think Bielsa came out afterwards and said, look, it's a strong side that we've faced and gave us a lot of credit, as managers tend to do, but a disappointing result in that one. And then I guess another disappointing result a few days later against Charlton on the Saturday morning. I think we went behind, were we 2-0 down in that one or 2-1 down in that one? And then Lewis Potter scored the equaliser right at the end, although I think officially it's an own goal. But looking at those two games, first of all, I guess sort of the disappointing start to the festive period. What did you make of those games and what positives could you take out of them?
Look, as I was just thinking about that, I think in that last episode we did, I think we had sort of targeted 4 points, yeah, something from those two games, and to get one is probably disappointing. But also I think after having not picked up points at Leeds and playing so well and not picking up points, it's always challenging. And so then to go behind at Charlton in a game they're expected to win, it could easily have turned into no points. They really did work hard to get themselves back in the game, and they kept at it to the very last moment. Keane Lewis Potter probably deserved to get the credit for that goal. It was a good leap and a good header. It was. I think there are positives we can take out of those games, and just in the the attitude that we have taken towards games, and that we still take towards almost every game. We do tend to play most games as if we can win, and we are playing for the whole 90. Unlike what we saw at the beginning of the season, we're saying, we play really well for 60 and then we tire out. We are actually we can play the full 90 now. It's just we're just a little bit inconsistent, I guess. Just a little bit inconsistent at the moment, but with so many games, they're coming thick and fast. It would be hard to. And there haven't been too many changes or rotations through the sides, really. Just one or two through the centre of midfield for the most part, and occasionally he's dropped Bowler into that front three to start, but it's been a fairly consistent starting lineup for most of for those 5 games, I think. So it would have been hard for a lot of those boys that would have covered a lot of minutes and a lot of yards. So I think overall we've done pretty well, really.
Yeah, and it was funny, I think, watching that Charlton game. The commentator mentioned a couple of times that Charlton had conceded these late goals so often and they'd gone so long without a win, that you kind of had in the back of your mind, surely, we're going to snatch something right at the end here. And we had that late free kick that came in. I think it then bounced out of the area, and I think it was Grzycki whipped the free kick, the cross back into the box for Lewis Potter. And sure enough, we were able to get the equaliser. But, as you say, we're sort of looking at hopefully 4 points, 3 points from those two games. And I guess to only come away with 1 point's not fantastic, but the way that we could fight back against Charlton, the way we've managed to fight back in those games where we haven't been playing well, was really positive to see. And in fact, the next game we came out against Birmingham and won 3-0, which was great. And I think personally from watching that game, I think one of the biggest positives in a way, as weird as it is to say, the fact that Bowen didn't score was actually a really good thing, because there's been so many games lately where he's been our main focal point and our main threat. And I think it was against Stoke where Klukas said that if you shut down Bowen, that's pretty much all of our attacking potential. And I think he did score the 2 goals in that game, which kind of proved Klukas right. But to have Eves, who were the 3 scorers in that one? It was Eves, I'm going to look that up.
Did KLP get another one? That one?
Yeah.
And then, who was it?
Oh, it was Eves, Krasicki, and Lewis Potter, of course. Lewis Potter scoring his first home goal, which was a fantastic finish right at the end. It was great to see much more attacking potential from the side and sharing that load around, because that makes us so much more unpredictable going into games. If sides can't just focus on closing down Bowen to shut us down. It was then unfortunately followed up with a pretty dour defeat to Forest, probably one of our worst performances of the season, I'd say. And it's always unfortunate, I guess, when you concede a penalty pretty early, because that can shape the game so significantly. But it was just one of those games where, watching it from the start, we just didn't look on at any point, really. I think Irvine had a really good chance in the first few minutes, which he fluffed. But that was really our biggest chance in those early stages, I would say. And then, of course, it was really funny that Irvine, kind of with a similar sort of shot a few days later or a few days ago, got the winner against QPR on his 100th appearance for the club. So those three games, sort of a mixture. The great convincing 3-0 win over Birmingham, the last-minute winner against QPR, and then a pretty disappointing defeat to Forest in between. What did you make of those three?
Yeah, I think it makes this a bit of a difficult form line to read. But I think, like, obviously, if we'd got the points against Forest, it would have been better. But I think when you take it into context, and we are sitting 3 points off the top six at the moment, we've got Sheffield Wednesday coming up, who are currently occupying sixth. We're not really in a bad position. I think that the game against Birmingham was a demonstration of what we can do when we're on our day. You know, when we have a really good game, we play really well. We'll put, we can put several goals past the opposition. Forest was almost the exact opposite, and we showed what we do when we're not on our game, and when we're really poor, and we don't tend to offer a lot, and we don't create a lot of chances, and we just invite the opposition to attack us. And then, funnily enough, QPR was a bit of a mixture. One of those games where we didn't play great, but we grafted really well, and overcame that going behind to claw back. It was nice to see Honeyman get his first goal for City.
Interesting celebration, but
yeah.
We seem to have a habit against QPR of scoring those sorts of funny little deflected goals, because I think there was Diamande a few seasons ago got a similar winner against QPR, which was a weird little deflected goal in off the keeper. So we're sort of making a habit of that. Yeah,
I think I don't know. I mean, I'll take any goal. I don't really necessarily care how it comes. It's just, I think it's good to see. Now, you've in our midfield, Irvine's scored, Honeyman scored. I think Batty scored one earlier in the year.
I think he scored the first goal of the season, didn't he, against Swansea?
He may well have. But like most of that anyone who's going into that midfield three is contributing, not super consistently, but pretty much everyone in there has scored one or two a goal at least, which is nice. As you sort of mentioned before, with the game against Birmingham, with when Bowen not scored, it being positive that the other players are stepping up, and I think it's good that also when your midfield can chime in occasionally to take that extra bit of pressure off our forwards, because we've got a very fluid forward, and there's a lot of pressure on whoever happens to be the one that's in the middle at the time the ball gets up there. So I think we should be looking fairly positively at those three games in particular, because they've they've put us in a really good position. Could have been stronger, but I mean, that's the story of the season, really. If we'd won that game, or we'd won that game, then we'd be here. But at the end of the day, we're not, and but we are in a very strong position leading into the back half of the season.
And look, I think that's really the story of the division. I think it was only a couple of games ago against Forest, it might have been, where there was only two sides in the top 12 actually got the 3 points. I think it was Forest and Brentford were the only two. Everyone else dropped points. I think Leeds, West Brom, Fulham all drew games. Bristol, Swansea and us lost, so and Sheffield Wednesday as well. So it really is the story of the division that any number of sides could look at their form and say, oh look, if we'd won that game, if we'd held on here or there, or knocked in a late winner there, we'd be up in first. But the way the division is, everyone's sort of has their patchy form, and I think I said a few weeks ago, I mean, the division is basically whoever can play their best football the most consistently will go up. There's maybe 10 sides who all at their best are a promotion candidate, but it's about playing consistently well in the division for as long as you can to actually put that form together. And it's funny, I think for the last couple of weeks we've just been bouncing around between about 10th and 14th, I guess, just sort of never really losing touch with the playoff places, but never actually getting into the playoff places, which actually, you know, looking ahead to this Sheffield Wednesday game, you know, it poses the real possibility that if sides around us also drop points, we could leapfrog Sheffield Wednesday into that top six, perhaps a week or two early for really making a push for the top six, but it's always a possibility. I guess the most significant thing to come out of this run of games is a couple of injuries. You did mention before we haven't really rotated a whole lot of the side in these games, which is a little bit surprising when you're playing every 3 or 4 days. I guess most significantly it's the injuries to Elder and Kingsley. Kingsley picking up his injury against QPR means I would guess maybe Fleming comes into the side, or I think the other alternative kind of suggestion could be Lee High at left back.
Lee High to switch.
Yeah, and then
Pennington in at the right.
Pennington at right. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's probably the most concerning element. I think Magennis has also suffered a setback on his recovery, so Eves really is our only striker at the moment. I don't know what's happened to Bullock. I think he's one of those players. I think he's just got this sort of injury that is just this lengthy injury no one really knows a whole lot about. Hasn't really been in the side much at all, so you kind of can't really rely on him too much to do much. But it's a little bit concerning that we've picked up these injuries. I know the transfer window opens in a couple of days, or I think it opens tomorrow even. So whether we're active, whether we try and bring a few in, what do you make of the injuries and the impact they could have on the side?
The injuries, I just wonder if are they not allowed to use whistles at training to keep Kingsley fit on the training park? Because it seems every time he gets a match and the whistle blows, he's down injured. So he's had a horrendous run of form in terms of injuries for us.
I think he was in tears when he went off, because it's you know, he's been out of the side with Elder playing so well. Then Elder goes down, so he gets his chance, and then he goes down injured.
Yeah, it would surprise me, because I mean, almost every time he's played, apart from I think right at the beginning of the season, he got a few games in a row. But apart from that, it's sort of been he'd get injured and he'd be out for a few weeks, and Fleming would play a couple of games, and then Kingsley'd come back in, and then he'd get injured again, and just again and again and again. He's very readily approaching, or if he has not already gained that injury-prone tag, which could be fairly detrimental to the remainder of his career, to be honest. But I don't know. I guess, I mean, injuries come, and it's just a part of the game, and I think it's about whether we are prepared enough with our squad depth to accommodate for those issues as they arise, which is our eternal question every time we start a season, and we either have minimal or weird investment from the alums. But I don't think we're in a terrible position. I think that that back line does concern me a little bit, but I think in terms of with attacking players, I think because we've got that other young kid from Wigan, was it James Berry?
Yeah, I saw. I think he was on the bench against QPR. Did he?
Yeah, he was on the bench. I don't remember. I'm not sure. I don't think he did, but
it's good to see those younger guys getting a chance to come into the squad and potentially have an impact.
As far as I know, he's a pretty well-rated young player. So there are still plenty of options around. No, he didn't come on. No. All right. Right. Where was I?
But yeah, look. So, I mean, I think we do need to bring in maybe one or two. I think certainly up top to have another option to give Eves a bit of competition if Magennis isn't going to be fit. I wonder if someone like a Pennington might want to go back to Everton. I know McLaughlin's just come back from his loan spell up in Scotland, whether he's sort of seen as, in a way, a replacement for Pennington, with McLaughlin now sort of filling that role of sitting on the bench. I would have thought we'd probably want to give him a bit more development, whether we send him out on loan again. But I think certainly in attacks where we probably need a bit of a reinforcement. I think Bowler's looked really good when he's come into the side, so I'd love to see him get more of an opportunity. Whether that means you almost push Bowen into the centre and play Bowler on the right. I think Bowen's at his most effective on the right, so it's a bit of a tough one to call there. But yeah, look, I think it's almost just a case of just needing a few more bodies. I know there was talk that we're looking to bolster the midfield and attack. I sort of wonder. Midfield seems to be pretty well stocked. I guess with Stewart out injured, that doesn't really help matters too much. And I guess Henrikson's going to leave. I don't know. I think our wide options are probably where we'd probably need to stock up a bit more. I still don't. I can't believe that Lehigh's been as injury free as he has been at his age. Considering we don't really have a backup right back, that was my main concern coming into the season, and it hasn't really been exploited yet. But if Lehigh goes down injured, knock on wood, tomorrow morning, then we have no senior fullbacks left, basically. So that would be my main concern for reinforcements. But what do you think?
I know I've seen recently that we've been linked with Malik Wilkes again, I believe. Which is interesting because it was only like 4 months ago that he declined, to join us and join someone else. So interesting that we've been relinked with him again. But I think in terms of personnel, the Lehigh is concerning. If something were to happen to him, hopefully he's just taking care of himself and knows how to manage his own body pretty well. So whatever's been working, hopefully it can continue. But I think you're right in terms of the forwards. Probably, probably one or two there. Because I think when you mentioned Bullock and we obviously can't really rely on him. He was always an unknown quantity. He came in for a few weeks trial and showed enough, I suppose. So they picked him up, but. I think you're right with Bowler. He has looked good. He was a bit slow to get started, but he's. I think when Bowler and Grzycki and Bowen play in that really fluid front three, we are particularly damaging and effective. And
I guess the other concern, I think Lewis Potter's also had a bit of an injury concern as well, because I was just thinking he's a good option to have up top, because he's looked so damaging when he's come on, but he seems to have some sort of mystery illness as well. So I think there's a few issues around the fitness of players at the moment. Yeah,
I think, and I would have to just assume that some of that is going to come just from the amount of games that people are playing at the moment. I sort of mentioned it before that we had 5 games in, what was it, maybe 2 weeks, probably something like that, with not a huge amount of rotation for players. So it's always challenging. This is always this period that we've just got through, and it's still probably a little to come. It's still a little bit busy at the beginning of January, I think, but this is the period that can really make or break your season and how well you can get through that. So I think we're in a good position. I think if we 1 or 2 early smart pieces of business, hold on to all our players, and we will give ourselves a real good chance at pushing into those promotion spots, playoff spots. Sorry, and hopefully we're come the end of the season, we'll be only a few games away from the Premier League.
Yeah, and look, I'll remain a little bit sceptical that McGann's saying that we're planning. I think we've heard that a few times, and it hasn't really manifested, but it does sound like we've put a few bids in for players, so I guess we'll see what happens on that front, and I guess I'll treat it as a wait and see. We'll see what happens with transfers. We've got a pretty big game tomorrow morning against Sheffield Wednesday. Last time we played them, we came away with a 1-0 win thanks to an Eves header, which was a fantastic goal scored by him. They've had a bit of mixed form. They've lost to Cardiff and Stoke in their last two, which weren't fantastic results for them. But before that, they'd beaten Bristol City and then smashed Forest 4-0. So, like we're talking about before, the inconsistent form of the Championship, it's very hard to get a read on how they're looking. I think they were third when they were facing Stoke, so then they've now dropped down to sixth. So, their grip on the playoff places is pretty tenuous at the moment as well. But like we said before, they're only 3 points ahead of us. So it's a very congested top, 6th to 12th, really. I mean, 3 points separating us in 12th from Sheffield Wednesday in 6th. And then even you look ahead of them to Brentford and Forest in 4th and 5th on 40 points. So it's still all to play for all of those sides with half a season to go. We've already sort of touched on the injury concerns. Coming off the win against QPR, I guess we're going to sort of try and build on that, but it might be a little bit difficult if we're having to make a few personnel changes. You sort of alluded to it before, would you probably just switch Lehigh to left back, bring Pennington in and try and keep it consistent other than that?
I think that's probably what will happen. I think the concern is if we don't, and I know we shouldn't be making the decisions based on individual players or whatever, but I read months ago that Pennington was frustrated and wanted to go back to Everton. So if we don't take the opportunity, he's a senior player, he's in a position to actually play some games now. It's probably better to try and keep him, happy enough and around. Because if he, and Everton decide to end that loan agreement early, then we're just another player down.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I mean, it's sort of like a very easy win to include him in the side. It's not really, in a way, it's almost a better option than playing Fleming at left back. No disrespect to Fleming, but he's a kid, as you say. Pennington's an established senior player. It seems a very easy win to keep him happy now that he has that opportunity to fit into the side. So I think surely that'll be the way that we go against Sheffield Wednesday. What's your feelings on the game in general, though? Are you confident that we can get something out of this one? I know we tend to play a little bit better against these sides, although that recent loss to Forest kind of runs counter to that. Do you see it as a winnable fixture?
I absolutely see it as winnable. I think it's just there's just that same story of sort of which Hull City team walks out onto the pitch tomorrow morning. I think we'll have a ready to hot go, and if we can start well early and just be moving the ball around well, then I think we'll be able to get some points. I reckon 3's definitely achievable. 1 is a minimum. I'd be fairly disappointed if we took nothing from the game, because it would sort of just represent that, or continue to represent that every time we sort of seem like we're making it's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation, and we go, we're only 3 points off the 6, and then all of a sudden we're 6 points off again, and so I'd be disappointed if we didn't take any points. But I think it's winnable. I think
especially with their form in the last couple of games, I guess we should take some confidence out of that and sort of see them as a pretty vulnerable side that we can run at and try to put on the back foot.
Yeah, and I think the last time we played them, I feel like we didn't even play. I don't think we played great. I think that we had some chances, they had some chances, but that Ease's goal was really good. But I think I was actually looking just before. I think Sheffield have a couple of players out. I think Westwood's out and Forestieri's out. So there are a couple of big names that we, if they are indeed out, that we should be looking to take advantage of that. Get them while they're down, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got another big game on the weekend. It's our first FA Cup game of the season against Rotherham. It was really unfortunate. We looked like we were going to be playing a Solihull, non-league side, ground tick for all the local supporters. 3-0 up against Rotherham with about 75 minutes gone, I think, and then pretty remarkable comeback from Rotherham to win that game 4-3. To sort of to break Hull hearts. I think even the official Twitter account was sort of tweeting out about getting excited about going to Solihull, and it didn't really come to fruition. But a big game against Rotherham, sort of a derby game, I guess. Played them a little bit in the Championship in recent seasons. I think we've won 3 of the last 6 games against them, so we can take some winning form against them, winning confidence, I guess, against them. I guess with the injuries, you sort of look at it as a chance to fully rotate the side and give everyone a rest after the busy Christmas period. But we can look at the Tranmere game in the League Cup and say, look, even if we do rotate the full 11, we're every chance of coming away with a win against a lower league side. Do you sort of see it as a game that we'd want to sort of... you always want to go out and win football games. Is it a game that you have high on the priority list to win, or are you not really bothered about the result?
Look, I think we've had got a lot of good fond memories of the FA Cup, but look, it's not. I don't think it should be high on our priorities. But I don't think we should take it lightly either. I think we just take it as it comes. We've got to do what's best for the squad, and if that means that we rotate and we play a lot of young guys and give them a taste of potentially what it's like to play against some men instead of the boys, then perhaps that's and as you say, like we did that at Tranmere and came out with the win. So I'd suggest we'd be rotating pretty heavily for the Rotherham, the cup match, but I still don't think. I think we've seen with the integration of some of those young guys into our first team that we've got a lot of quality still in those young players. Yeah. You even talk about you mentioned Sean McLaughlin's just come back from just returned from his loan. Maybe he gets a run on Saturday at Rotherham. Yeah,
that's a really good point. It gives him a good chance to integrate with the team without being a league fixture. It's a bit of a lower intensity game for him.
Yeah, so I think it's a cup match. We'll play. We'll either win or we'll lose. I'm not gonna lose any sleep on a loss in the FA Cup. I'm more concerned with, at this stage, with where we are in the league and how we're going at the moment and the players that we've got and the time of year it is. I think we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got to make sure that we keep a hold of those key players. We've got to try and keep building on this and edging closer to those playoff positions. And just trying to build a foundation for the second half of this season so that we can get ourselves in a position, the best position that we possibly can, to be fighting for the Premier League next season.
And just before we move on, I think the Rotherham game has been selected for television over in the UK, but it's oddly not on the ESPN schedule over here, so I don't know if it's televised here. I don't know if it's on KO or whatever it might be on, but might keep an eye out for that one to see if we can watch that one over here. It's a blockbuster, glamorous tie, Hull City against Rotherham, but for whatever reason it's being televised, I think, so it's an interesting one. We'll just finish off then, just before we sign off for the episode, with our typical football flashback of the week, and I've selected a New Year's Day fixture from a couple of years ago back in the Premier League, second season under Steve Bruce, where we knocked off Everton 2-0. Goals coming from El Mohammadi and Jalovic against his former club, both scored within about 5 minutes of each other, I think. It was I have vague memories of the win only because my best mate's an Everton supporter, and I think it's one of the only times that we've actually knocked off Everton in the Premier League, really, in recent years when we've watched games together. So got a lot of joy out of it for that reason. And looking at the fixture results around that game, I think it was only our second win in 13 games that season, which is pretty depressing when you consider the optimism and the hope surrounding the start of that season with our European matches and our expensively assembled squad. To only win 2 games in 13 around that middle period of the year was pretty remarkable. But the other remarkable thing about this game was it was actually our first ever win in January in the Premier League, which is a pretty odd stat, but when you think we'd been in the Premier League for 3 seasons prior to this one, to not have won a single Premier League game in January before this one was pretty crazy.
It was. I actually almost certain that I did actually watch this game, so that's a nice change. A lot of a lot of the flashbacks we do are just before I've started, but no, that was yeah, that wouldn't have been because didn't was Yelovich didn't end up staying for that long, did he?
No, so this would have been...
was
So he signed the previous January, so the first season we were in the Premier League, he signed from Everton. This was the second season where he was basically... We had Hernandez, we had... I think Ndoye signed that January as well. But Yelovich was really the main striker. I think he was our top scorer for the season. He then scored a penalty, I want to say, against Wolves or someone the following season in the Championship before he joined West Ham, I think, from there. Just a little bit weird. I can't even remember him being a West Ham player, but that did happen. And then I think he went off to China. I don't know if he's still there, actually.
Who knows? But yeah, right. No, it was... some interesting numbers that you'd like to point out. That was the first, Premier League January win, and just to be at that point second, only 2 wins in 13. Yeah, right, it's just I don't know. It's crazy numbers, and to just think from there. I mean, we've been up and down, from the Premier League and Championship, but I think we've as a club we've come a long way from there, just as a whole. So it's but no, I think just to El Mohammadi obviously was a great servant for the club, and
I think I think that goal was his first goal for the season, and it was a header, which I think he did score a couple of headers for us, which is funny because he's I guess he's not a particularly tall player, and because he plays on the wing, you wouldn't necessarily think of him coming in for a header, but I think it was a pretty well taken goal from the time. I think it was assisted by Rossignol as well, so it was great to see some pretty familiar names in that side that day, sort of making up the squad. But I think it's on the topic of Everton, my friend mentioned that I think Baines and Coleman started the first game of the decade and the last game of the decade for Everton. So I was sort of thinking about the whole players of the potential equivalents, and it's pretty remarkable to think that not once but twice, I would say maybe even 3 times really, we've had a complete renewal of the team. You look at the team that would have started in 2010 would have been, your Ashbys, your Andy Dawson, your Myhill, your Giovanni, those sorts of guys. Then by about 2015, you had your Yelovich, your McGregor, your El Mohammadi, your Curtis Davies, Huddlestons, and now 2019, 2020, you have your Irvines, your Bowen, your Long, your everyone. It's changed so much, and I don't think there'd be many teams in England that have had that amount of renewal or change in the squad that significantly over the decade, because I guess we, more than a lot of teams, have bounced between the Premier League and the Championship, and I guess those 2 divisions have the biggest gulf almost. I guess Championship, League One maybe as well, but Premier League to Championship have such a big gulf in terms of finances that you're almost forced to sell your complete squad if you're not able to go up within a year or so. So it's pretty crazy to think, if you were looking at the decade as a whole, how the squad's changed so much since the start of the decade.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think with on that thing of finance and stuff, I think we were one of only a few clubs, even post parachute payments, to have recorded a profit, didn't we? Or
I think
not a profit, but like a
we had a profit.
A net profit or something.
Yeah, I think we had a profit with parachute payments, and I have a feeling we might have made a very small profit potentially after player sales. Last year or the year before. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, because I think this is the first full year without parachute payments to see what our finances do. But certainly I think we're in a much stronger financial position than a lot of sides in the division because of our wage bill and the way we've got our wages structured. Because you look at so many clubs who are spending more on wages than they're actually earning as a total figure. So you think that's just on wages, let alone all their other operating expenses. I give it a couple of years, and the next Premier League rights deal is going to be really interesting as well. I mean, we're going a little bit off topic here, but the next Premier League rights deal is going to be really interesting, because I can't see the money significantly increasing, and if anything, it probably decreases. And there's so many clubs You know, you've got your Uniteds and Liverpools who have the sponsorship money and everything else supporting them as well. But a lot of those clubs, like your West Ham, your I don't know, Newcastle perhaps, and your Southamptons or whoever, who are really relying on the TV money to prop them up, if that money then disappears, financially they're in a whole lot of trouble. And then you look further down at the Championship, a lot of those clubs are gambling on getting to the Premier League and putting a whole lot of money in debt into the club, that if they can't then get that recouped in the Premier League, it leaves them in a pretty concerning position as well. And you've seen how close Bolton came to liquidation. You see what happened at Bury. Macclesfield's going through issues as well down in League Two. So it's a really concerning place to be in. And as much as we want to sneer and scoff at the Allams saying how we're the best run club in the country, which we're quite evidently not, we're still in a very financially secure position, at least, you know, sort of pending what these financials show now that we don't have the parachutes. But we seem to be in a much more secure financial position than a lot of other clubs.
Yeah, I think that's what we've come to realize, I guess, over the time that we've been doing the podcast and just being able to, you know, discuss some of these issues, is that as a whole, what we've experienced as the Allams hasn't maybe been as bad as what it first appears. You know, those first impressions of the situations have often overridden what we now, you know, what we've come to realize, and it's been a bit of a little bit of sensationalism in some regards with some aspects, and some things have been made into bigger deals than what they are. But yeah. I think overall, you know, we've got a football club that's got a reasonable squad. You know, the owners are now working to re-engage with the fans and you know, resolve these issues.
I think it's always going to be a very emotional issue for a lot of people, and I'm careful not to say that people are wrong for having the opinions that they have of the owners, because everyone's obviously been impacted in different ways and therefore has different opinions of them, and they're perfectly entitled to that. But I think in terms of the perception of them as being such horrible owners, I think they've made huge strides this season to turn that around. I know for some people it's never going to change. They're never going to be forgiven, and look, you kind of have to say fair enough if that's their attitude. But I feel much more confident in the future of the club off the field than I would if I was, say, a Derby fan. And you look at the amount of money that's gone into that club, and they're really struggling in the table at the moment. That if they, I think recently the owner basically sold the ground to himself to get around issues with financial fair play. They don't really have any more tricks left. If they still have a few more issues in a couple of years, they could be running into a heap of trouble.
Yeah, actually, on Derby, I saw them I looked at the table the other day and saw how low they were, and thought, wow, because they'd spent a lot of money, only in the last couple of years, just they spent that money to make that premiership push, just what you were talking about just moments ago, and you see what happens when it doesn't work, when they don't quite get there, and they've invested all that money. It can all go sideways. But I think the other thing, and like what you're saying, is you're careful not to criticize anyone on their opinions or whatever. Is the other thing is, from my perspective, I'm on the other side of the world from the city, and I don't really know what the feeling is. Yeah. You know, there's people that have lived in Hull their whole lives, who have been following this club their whole lives. And I'm not going to say that you know, as you said, that their opinions are invalid or that they're wrong. You know, they probably have a better understanding, if anything, a better understanding of what's going on there than I do from the other side of the world. You know, reading Hull Daily Mail, but
it's just our perception and how we can see it all with that sort of layer removed. Where, you know, we watch the games at 2 a.m. on TV. We're not in the stand. We're not around the city before and after games either, but. I'd love to get back there. It's always a great experience. But yeah, look, I mean, we've got 2 great games to look forward to this weekend, and hopefully we can win both of them. So thank you for joining me today, Dan.
No worries.
Thank you everyone for listening in. Hope you've all had a very happy and restful festive period. And we'll be back this time next week to discuss Hull City's next couple of games. So until then, come on City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
This is on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you